So Git on Urbit, it's a project that has been talked about almost a year ago, and it took us almost half a year to figure out like how to move forward with it. Eventually, Urbit Foundation has decided to fund it, and I've spent last half a year re-implementing Git on Urbit in Hoon. All right, so it feels weird to thank you. It feels weird to introduce Git to audience of developers who probably use Git hundreds of times per day, and but still, maybe some of us here are not really that familiar. So Git basically is a very popular piece of software that's used to build software. It goes beyond just revision control. But at the time that it was introduced, it was quite novel. So at its foundation, there are actually three pieces that go into making it work. So first of all, you have the content addressable store. What it means is that, well, basically for every content that you can commit to Git, there's a unique address. So there's like almost one-to-one mapping. It's a hash function. So it makes Git very efficient. And at the time that Git was created, that was actually quite a novel thing. But Git was not the only revision control system that tried to do things this way. There were others. And the next thing that Git has is the commit history, graph, and algorithms. So usually when you hear people talking about software, they like almost talk exclusively about like the content addressable store and so on and so on. But actually, at least nowadays, content addressable store, it's not something unusual. Actually, it takes just 2 lines of Hoon to implement this. So actually, the real meat of Git in Urbit is having the algorithms for processing the data structures. This is actually the thing that makes Git work. Never mind the database. Although the content store enables Git operations in an efficient manner, but once you have it, the game is about like having all these commands and the tooling that developers use. So in Git, you have something like close to 100 commands. These are both the plumbing and porcelain. The porcelain is the stuff that you use daily. These are like git clone, commit, and the stuff. At the bottom of it, at least in the past, there used to be like smaller commands that the bigger commands use. Nowadays, actually, these are all single binaries. So Git has a library, and any command is no longer like a string of scripts, bash scripts or Perl scripts. It's actually a single binary that uses well, the Git C library to do its thing. Okay, so to give you some idea about the difficulty and the scope of this project. So the Git code base is close to 600,000 lines of code. It's been developed since 2005, so it's almost 20 years in development, and currently there are like 2,000 contributors. So it's a very huge and high-profile project, and you have like a single person going out there and trying to do something about it. So as you might imagine, it was a kind of daunting challenge, but it's possible. Like I'm standing here because some basic Git functionality is actually working there on Urbit already. And so actually during the course of this project, I was actually waking up and maybe starting my day by firing up an Vim editor and going to the Git repository and like following through like maybe 10 different files, each of which is like 1,000 lines of code and has like hundreds of functions. So actually there's one thing I want to mention, which at least I have never heard anyone talking about this, is that actually in this sort of scenario where you're just trying to almost re-implement, but sometimes also reverse engineer, because in Git not everything is documented. It has a good documentation, but some of the things, they are literally just in the code. It's a very old piece of C code, so as you might imagine, it's been written by Linus Torvalds. So it's not an easy task to just go in there and extract this sort of a slice of functionality that you want. And I have personally found that, I mean, it's a realization that came to me sometime into the project, is that most of the time, I'm actually, as a programmer, my mental limitation is on memory. It's about having the mental map of the thing that I want to build inside my mind. And of course, you can say maybe I just partition like my task into like subtasks and so on. But I found that actually you can use these memory techniques which has been known since antiquity. It goes by different names like memory passes, there's the link system, and so on. So I actually started to apply these things while I was exploring the Git codebase. And in many cases, it's really, I cannot say like without those things, I would not be able to do the job, but maybe it would require much more time than I have taken so far. Okay, so what is Git? And the last thing is that Git is actually GitHub. Like when we were starting on this project, it was never about like sort of Urbit posturing so that you can say, oh, we have a Git on Urbit, so what, right? Because in the modern era, the way Git is used is that, yeah, of course, at your local machine you do use the command line, but actually the sort of collaborative workhorse are the developer platforms such as GitHub, GitLab, and so on. So our thinking in this project was from the very beginning is that Git on Urbit infrastructure is just the first piece towards having a GitHub on Urbit. Okay, so now we are going to get to what's actually available for that's going to be released quite soon on the network. I'm going to go over the architecture of what I've been building. So Git on Urbit infrastructure, at the very bottom, you have the Hoon Git library. So this is a pure Hoon implementation of basic Git facilities such as Git repositories, the object store, pack files, and so on. So based on this foundation, you can, for example, implement the Git server. And it's a standalone modular library. So if anyone here wants to do something with Git, you can do it using this library. It's not tied to any other pieces that I'm going to talk about. And okay, so there is a protocol library. So well, you can also do networking. You can reach out to like, Git servers and talk with them. Okay, so it also handles a Git native binary format. So in Git is very efficient. So most of the time, if you go to your Git repository, you're not going to find actual objects. Everything is packed in a very efficient manner. So Git on Urbit can actually handle all this. You can literally export a sort of bundle from your repository and stuff it into your peer, and it's going to show up. Okay, so now the next piece that we wanted to have is the Git store. So Git store, it's a store for Git repositories, but also it's a Git server. So it has HTTP interface that well, you can reach out to. And there's a Sky interface in the works in the vein of something like GitHub API, which sort of exposes the internal structure of the repository. So you're going to be able to do that over Scries. And there is some well, poke interface to manipulate whatever is in the store. And the second thing that we have already is Git CMD agent. So this is a Unix-like shell for Git commands inside Urbit. So it's a CLI. It basically has, there's a sort of framework for introducing new commands. Each command from Git CMD is a thread. So it can do anything, actually. Most of the time you do something with Git. So basically you work with the strands library, you compose it, and you come up with a command which basically receives the arguments, options, the context of where you are, because you might be in this repository on this branch, maybe, or even inside a certain tree. And it can do anything, and as an output, it can well, produce an updated repository. And also there's a sort of standard output, which comes from the shoe library. Like basically each thread gets the sole ID, which lets you do like printing while the thread is working. Okay, so basically you have these three components so far, and you can interface with them, but also you can build something that's totally different from here, just using the Hoon Git library. Okay, so before we go into demo, which is I guess what most people are waiting for, let's talk about jets. So I will not surprise you when I would say that without jets, Git on Urbit is just very slow. It's not unusually slow as soon as you have compression jets. I haven't tested yet, but as soon as there's a compression, I think even unjetted Git on Urbit should be able to handle typical Hoon app or Urbit app repositories, which basically consist of like Hoon text files plus maybe some interface blobs, which is not too it's not too much of a burden for even for Ver. So what I found necessary to clone big repositories such as such as the Urbit's repository, which is 200 megabytes, I found it necessary to have a bystring library, which is not too extensively jetted. So a bystring library is basically a byte string is an oct, which is like a pair of a length, and an item which pretends to be a byte array, plus a position pointer, so that you can move inside, you can combine maybe two byte strings together. There are two jets for it. And, well, there are some things that the runtime cannot support efficiently enough when Git is communicating over HTTP, so there are two jets for that as well. And there's something about the Git archival format that needs to be jetted currently. And well, and there is the flaved. It's a jet stub because apparently someone has been working on it for quite some time, so we didn't want to duplicate the work. And I heard from Piri, whose friend is working on it, that it's going to come out soon. So as soon as there is the flaved, this is going to be released on the network, and you can probably run it without too much jetting as long as the Hoon stream is in the standard library. Okay, so to give you an idea about like how good is actually the Urbit runtime, even with this minimal jetting, is that the cloning of a 200 megabytes repository where you have 300,000 objects that all need to be indexed and processed when you clone it. So the benchmark is that Git takes half a minute. Meanwhile, Hoon Git takes 6 minutes, which is only 15 times slower, and it's not too bad. Like it's not a difference of a sort where I know you have to spend 2 hours waiting. It's actually you can go for a walk and come back, and it's gonna be there. Okay, so now we're gonna sit down and we're just gonna do a cloning party essentially. So the first thing is I'm gonna log into my ship on the mainnet, and which is running the Git on Urbit stuff, and I'm gonna clone the Urbit repository from GitHub. And after that, there must be a volunteer who is gonna clone this same repository which I have just cloned to the Urbit ship from this address. So word of explanation. So currently, there's no Git LFS support. So Git LFS is a large file system. It's a non-standard way for Git to support like big files which you don't want to keep in the repository. So unfortunately, it's being used in the Urbit repository. So if you clone it while it's enabled, eventually at the end of it, it's gonna try to reach out to my ship and request like over the LFS protocol the blobs that are there. And I haven't got the time to implement this yet. So, but you can clone it as long as LFS is not running. Okay, so. Let's do it. Okay, so this is the ship ponmep-litsem, and I guess I'm gonna talk a bit louder. Can everybody hear me? Okay. And also take a sip of water. Oh, and my Wi-Fi just went down. Sorry about that. It's the arc. Okay. Okay, so I switched the sides. So okay, let's just close the pane. So this is my hosted ship. somewhere in the cloud. It's actually hosted in Atlanta, because when I was testing this with Neil previously, we just found how clever GitHub is about like mirroring the actual content delivery. And we are doing this like over, I was in Singapore, he was in US, it was just unbearably slow. So GitHub, when you clone something, they actually know, they have like, I guess, content delivery network which localizes the transfer. But anyway, let's go inside here. Okay, so I'm in my ship. So it has this git store agent and git command agent running. And I've just switched in Dojo to the git command line. Okay, so let's do tab completion. So you see there's a couple of commands supported. The first three of them, they're meant to enable this kind of shell-like navigation. So you imagine your git store is like a file system whereby each repository, you can go into it, and from there there are like branches. And in the future, from there you can also explore the actual contents of a repository on a certain revision. So if I type ls right now, there's nothing because it's a fresh store. But let's clone something. So okay. Okay, so now comes the big moment. So don't underestimate this. It's the first time in the history of a project that we are actually going to self-host our code base inside Urbit, which is, for me, it's a big thing. So let's see if it works. Okay, I mean, it's not terribly fast, but what's happening right now is that the runtime behind the scene it's requesting to the GitHub to, well, there's a protocol going on, but eventually it's requesting for the pack file of the entire repository to be downloaded. So, and it's already here. So what you see here, there's like it's a progress bar. It does not mirror the same from Git, but what's happening is that it's telling you that it's already received the whole pack file. Above you see, okay, never mind what's above. So anyway, the pack file is already in the Urbit, and what's happening right now is that the Git on the Hoon Git library is basically indexing everything. And this is the same thing that Git does when you clone anything. It fetches the archive, then it goes into it, expands all the deltas to get the hashes, and eventually actually leaves the pack file, but gives you leaves behind a sort of index that allows you for efficient access. And okay, so unfortunately it's gonna continue for 6 minutes. So I think what we can do in the meantime while it's running, we're gonna switch to somewhere else. I'm just gonna come back in a while. Okay, so I just wanna showcase one more way to actually take a Git repository and stuff it into your Urbit ship, because sometimes maybe you have a local Git repository and you don't want to be forced to like establish a server just to suck something inside your ship. So there is a facility for it inside Git, which is the following. Okay, so I'm gonna just go into test repos, and like Urbit repository is good for like showing off that we have actually cloned it, but normally I just work with smaller repositories. So in this case, okay, and let's just make it bigger. So in this case, there is the Yard repository. Yard is a desk made by Neil, which sort of aggregates different libraries into a single desk that you can just put into your ship. So it's here, and let me just make sure. Okay, there is some stuff I've been doing here. So let's reset this, and what we are going to do right now is create a bundle. So a bundle is basically an archive that you can export from any repository by specifying which kind of branches you want it to contain. So, and we are on the branch main. So we are just gonna create a bundle which is where yard BDL, and we're just gonna put the main branch in there. Okay, so as you see, it did something, and you see this yard BDL file. So how about we move it to the Urbit ship? Okay, so I'm in on the left you see that's fake dev, it's a development ship. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna move this file to the inside. Okay, so it's here, and now I'm gonna commit it. And let's see. Okay, so what you see here is that, again, like you put the bundle in there, and there's a marker for it, so the Git on Urbit, it understands like the Git bundle format, so it detected that it's there, and the marker run and process the bundle file, essentially like creating an index for the objects contained within and the references. So I'm not gonna do anything more with it because I don't have interface yet for, I would have to like manually import libraries, which is I guess not what you want to see. And let's see how is the progress on the other front. Oh no, something happened. Haha, that's demos for you. Oh, okay, so it ran out of memory. And I don't know why it's happening because I just tested it before coming here. I think maybe the loom size. Let me check. Okay. I forgot to. So that's like 4 gigabytes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
33 for 8.
I'm not sure if I have enough swap for it. So better. But that was enough. Okay. Okay. So never mind. Let's do this again. Okay, nothing is here. Okay, so I guess at this point we're just gonna move to another part of the demo. It's not gonna do the same thing. We just need to wait a little before the applause when it actually inside. Okay, so yeah, I hope it works this time. So now what I'm going to show you is actually explore these commands that I have implemented already. So we are gonna move to the fake ship again. Okay, we are in the fake ship. And now, so the way this demo is gonna work is that I actually have a local server running on my machine. It has the Art repository hosted there. So on the right side is the Earth, on the left side is the Mars. So we are gonna sort of do back and forth where I clone also from Earth, do some work, update it, and then push to the Git server that's actually here. So the way we do it is that, okay, so actually you see there are 2 repositories there. I'm just gonna remove everything. Oh, you just deleted your repository, but no, there is a failsafe whereby you have to repeat the command within 10 seconds to actually remove something. I thought it's pretty smart to do, like GitHub gives you this kind of huge red warning if you try to do something like that. So it's something that's good to have. Okay, so now it's gone. Same with the hits. Okay, so now we are clean. So let's just clone from the local host. And I think that's just Yard. Okay, so we are inside. We have the Yard repository. It has been cloned from my local Git server. It's not from GitHub because I don't want to be like interfacing with GitHub for pushing and so on. And we can go inside. Let's see. So by default, usually when you clone from Git, it just gives you a default tracking branch, which is whatever what it thinks is the exposed branch there. So it's here. And what we can do is we can go inside of it. And here, it's not going to show you files or anything like that, just because I haven't implemented this yet. But what we can do is that we're just going to see the log. Okay. So there is, unfortunately, there is some update already. And okay, so I'm just going to fix that and restore it. Okay, so we are on Earth, git log. I'm just gonna reset by 1 commit backwards, push it. Oh, okay. It doesn't have the read access right. All right, never mind. Let's just keep it. So there is a log command. If you see its output, it looks surprisingly like git. And whoa, it doesn't match. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Let's just remove it, clone it. Okay. All right, we are home. So you see, so let's see, you see how many commits here? 4. So this shell is actually tries to mimic the Unix shell as much as possible. So there are like options with the usual Unix syntax. There is not a completion on options or anything like that, just because it's kind of difficult to do with in the issue library currently, but it's still quite usable. Well, so you see, I can compare the outputs. The only difference is that there's no good renderer for dates yet, and I haven't taken time to render the time zone differently, but otherwise you can pretend it's actually the same. I mean, it's the same as what Git gives you. Okay. I'm sorry? Okay, so let's see what we can do with it. All right, so how about we show some diff? So let's choose some nice commit here. So the way diff commands work is that you give it the starting point and the end point, and it's going to show the diff how do you get from starting point to the end point. So let's see this EA54 to 11C5. Okay, that's kind of nice. It's a small, nice commit. So one drawback of well, Urbit shell is that it doesn't have like a viewers for stuff. So as long as your output is too huge, well, you have to scroll manually, which is not too convenient, but not too bad either. Okay, so we just type the same thing, and let's see. Okay, I mean, it's not the same format because on the right, the Git uses this, whatever, like unified diff format, which shows you the context. I haven't yet get down to this, but at least you see what has changed, which is fair enough. Like, the point behind having all these commands here is the idea that you have cloned repositories into your ship, and you don't want to be just going down to earth just for the sake of, I don't know, like viewing what's the last commit or like what changes it has introduced, or maybe even just doing fast forward merge, which is I'm just going to showcase. So it's at this time it's sort of a minimal maintenance set, so that you can maybe not most of the time, but some of the time you don't have to drop down to earth to do like basic introspection on your Git repository. So how about we modify something here, push it to the local server, and fetch it from here, and see if this shows up. Okay, so how about we do this? Okay, or maybe even better. Maybe get rid of this repository here and clone it from Urbit. So the Urbit is at 8080, and so basically the Git server interface is exposed over the Git prefix. So you git / your repository. In this case, it's yard, and let's see. Okay, it worked. The Urbit server just served a Git repository over the HTTP protocol. Thank you. Okay, so how about we do some updates? A developer commons update from the Lake Summit. Save it. Let's commit it. Update from the Lake Summit. Okay. Okay, so now the other big thing, can you push to the server? Wow, it worked. But of course, we have to see if it actually shows up. So let's see the last commit. And you see it here. All right, let's do something crazy, guys. Let's make a new branch and push it to the repository, to the server. So let's switch. I don't know. There has been a lot of talk about shrubs and shrubbery. So how about we just make a new branch which is called shrub, go into it, and I don't know, update from Lake Summit, a developer, shrub commons, commit. I like shrubs. Oh yeah, thank you. I like shrubs. Okay. So now it's supposed to push a new branch to the Git server on Urbit. Okay, so you need to set the upstream before it lets you do it. Okay, it seems to work, but Is it really in the repository? Let's see. At least you see it in the listing. Let's see if you can go inside and do a log. Oh, it's here.
But does it have the right diff?
It doesn't. Oh, does it have the right diff? I don't know. Let's check. Okay.
On the server.
Yeah, on the server. So I'm just trying to put it for comparison. Git log and two.
You can say.
Okay, so
Git
okay, just for completeness, just do it like this. Okay, this is the diff from the Earth, and now let's see the diff from the Urbit. Okay, what was that? 6.3 CF44. Okay, you see it's here. Okay, and now let's try one more thing, which is the fast forward merge, because the shrub branch is actually built on the main branch, so we should be able to fast forward it. So let's quickly go into yard main, and now we are here. So let's see if we can do this. Okay, so so now does the main. Okay, so the main branch is actually pointed to the same place as the shrub branch, which means we just merge fast forward. It's not the like octopus merge, whatever, but it works. Okay, so I think my time is not too long at this point, so let's see if this has worked. Oh, it actually works. So you see the Urbit repository is already on the ship. Let's see what has been going on recently. And oh no, it doesn't work. Oh, okay, because it's not, you didn't give it a branch, so I think it should be developed. Okay, so the last 3 commits for the Urbit repository are here. You seem to clone it. So now, where I go with my talk, I hope there is a volunteer which is gonna run this command. Is there anyone? So what you have to do is there's no tick at the end. I hope this variable makes gitlfs shut up and do not try to pretend the Urbit ship is actually a LFS server, which is not. So I hope this works. So I'm gonna move on with my talk. Meanwhile, someone can try this and, well, report the success or failure. Who knows?
All right, it's happening.
It's happening. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Will. So I'm just gonna move on with the talk while there's a cloning going on there, and okay. So now we get to the exciting part of this talk, which is what's beyond now that we have the Git infrastructure. So, okay, never mind. It's a 2-dimensional slide. Sorry, I'm gonna go down. Okay, so I got inspired by Strawberry. So apparently there are no apps in Strawberry. There are like these gray tails and everything is a tool or a protocol. But I have been thinking this way before I was like aware of the vision of Strawberry. So there is actually a CD logo for Vine, which is, I hope one day it's gonna turn into, in the context of Strawberry, maybe not a GitHub, but a set of tools and actually, like collaboration protocols to make all of Urbit's development processes actually self-hosted on the network. So the code name for this is Vine. And in the short term, there's actually 2 basic things that I would like to do quite soon, actually within the next couple of months. So there are 2 basic dev problems currently. I mean, not just 2, but I've chosen, there are many more, but I've just chosen 2. So the first one is poor project discoverability. So I'm not talking about like discovering already like developed packages because like people are assembling this, but imagine someone is working on something or they demo something, I don't know, like at the Volcano Summit. And it happens frequently that this work just vanishes from our consciousness, and maybe you reach out to the person and they tell you, oh, well, it's on this GitHub repo and on this branch. Like it's completely opaque, especially frequently to us, but also much more to a person who comes from the outside and tries to figure out where is interesting work happening. So there is the discoverability problem, and well, no package management. So what I'm going to be talking here is a different take from what archetype people are doing. About this in a minute. So I'm going to create a basic developer profile page in the vein of GitHub, but of course not so developed. The idea is that you as a Urbit developer, you have repositories hosted on GitHub, you collaborate there, but actually for the purpose of visibility, you're going to be able to clone them, actually mirror them to your Urbit ship. And there is going to be, so you will be able to host them inside Urbit. Someone, upon discovering them, can just, go in, say it's interesting, give you a star, maybe fork it. I have also planned something like executable and deployable GIS for Hoon, obviously. This could be like little desk or even generators which can be automatically pulled once you know the location to some of your desks, so that you can immediately run them without going through the whole procedure of like copying, cloning something from GitHub and so on. And tip a developer. This is a bit far-fetched, but it could be done without like micro payments inside Urbit. Maybe integrate with something that's already existing in the browser, and then all this is gonna be facilitated in two ways: through Pulse and also for some sort of gossip network on top of Pulse, so that you get a trusted view of like what are your friends working on, but you also can learn about like anything out there. Well, once the news actually reaches you. So there is a developer profile, and there's something there's desk.vine package format. So the idea is that it provides a metadata for your Urbit project as part of your repository. It sort of gives you also a bare bones dependency management in the sense that you clone Vine-enabled desk Git repository to your ship, and from there on, it can be assembled into like a working desk using the information that's contained there. And there is something I call grapes. I'm just going to show you an example in the next slide, but essentially the idea is that in Urbit, a desk is not a package in the traditional sense. The meaning of this is that in other ecosystems, when you think about packages, they're usually sort of targeted, like it's a library or it's an application. But so far, our experience has been is that desks actually can contain a multiplicity of things. They can have multiple apps, they can have generators, they can have libraries, they can have marks. And you as a developer, maybe you do not want to depend on the whole desk because maybe you're just interested in like the structure for POCs for the single application, or there's like a little library someone wrote and they're not keen to go out and like make a full-blown repository just for this single file. So grapes is like essentially a view into a desk, selection of files which you say are your dependencies. Okay, so this is just me writing JSON, how it's going to look like. It's nowhere near, like, there's no implementation for it. So you see, like, there's a name, version, authors. You go to dependencies where they are sourced from Urbit ships. So you have a hash, and you have the ship, and you have the path to the repository. And then therein, you have files that you actually want to pulling from there. And now these grapes, so this same desk, it can also consume dependencies, but it can also become a provider of dependencies. So say the Vine is going to have API, so there is a grape API for it, and there's just a single file. So someone can go in and say, I'm just going to depend on API grape inside this desk. And same, maybe for this libgit, of course, it's going to be a separate repository, but as an example, you can imagine it's some small library and sitting just in this desk. It's not going to be split into a separate repository, at least maybe for the time being where it's being worked on. But you can still treat it as a dependency. Okay.
I have a
okay.
questions about
Yes.
this. So your dependencies, are you not importing those as grapes themselves?
You're right. It could be like I hack it together in a short time, but yeah, you're right. There are two ways to actually consume dependencies. One is someone has not defined grapes, so you just manually do surgery on the desk and you extract what you want. But of course, like here you could actually be like whatever hash repository, and here instead of files there would be just a grape ID. Yeah. That you're right. I did. Yeah, it's not.
Have you seen Herd from Mitsum Salads?
Hurt.
Herd.
I mean, the last 6 months I was spent under a rock doing this, but
I think
maybe.
over a year ago.
Okay, so I am not aware of it.
Okay.
So, but let me know after the talk. Okay. So now last couple of slides is how this work relates to everything that's currently happening in the ecosystem. So of course you have vine, fit shrubbery. We also have talked with some of the people from the shrub project. So of course vine as a shrub. Like now, shrubbery. I mean, the shrubbery is already in alpha, so you can think about like maybe exploring, is it feasible to do this? And probably it's feasible to do this inside of Sky, for example, and sort of rethink this proposal in terms of like shrubs, right? Then another idea from Gary is that we have shrubs, so maybe there's like a special way where version control can work with the shrubs. Like you can have version control directly on the namespace, this sort of thing. And then of course the long-term goal is Sky as an ID, where Vine is basically provides just the protocols and the specific shrubs to make GitHub on Urbit happen. Never leave Mars for the rest of your life. Okay, so Vine and Archetype. So what Vine is trying to do is different from what Archetype guys are doing, because they're more after like really production grade tooling right now that's outside of Urbit. Vine focuses on having tools for maybe not already released project, but for something that's happening on the network. Someone is working on something interesting, and we're going to give you tooling to be able to grab the code and just do some work on it and share it with others and be discoverable by others. And then actually, this desk Vine format, it's perfectly compatible with Archetype. Like you can have a Golem project where you also provide desk Vine if that's your thing, because then you can expose it basically on the Archetype platform, but also it can be discoverable inside Vine, which is just kind of nice. And well, there are no Aries people here, I think, but essentially, I think the Git infrastructure on Urbit is, I think, as far as I am aware of, it's the only application on Urbit currently which actually stresses the three main components of the runtimes. It requires efficient processing of atoms as arrays, which unfortunately there's no facility for. It's well, consumes a lot of memory, and well, it also requires high performance networking. So I hope that actually this project also serves as a sort of well, it's a kind of a benchmark. Like it's running on Ver. Let's see how fast we can get it to run on Aries. Okay, so there's a group. If you want to hear the news about Git being released, please join. And well, we can also talk if you have some ideas about Vine and larger software development inside Urbit. Okay, so and before I end my talk, I would like to give thanks to a few people. So first of all, Neil from the Urbit Foundation. He's not here, but he's the mind behind Git on Urbit. Like he just proposed to me, do you want to work on it? I agreed. So big thanks to him. Thanks to the Urbit Foundation for funding the project and enabling me to work on it full time. And thanks to my wife, because we just had our firstborn baby, and she was okay with. Yeah. She was okay with me flying far away to be here with you guys. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention, and if anyone has questions, I'm happy to listen. Yeah.
Just tactically, the group you shared is currently private. Is that supposed to be the case, or?
Oh, I am sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna fix that just right after this talk. Okay. Yeah.
Speaking of security controls, is there read-write permissions on these repos at all?
Okay, yeah, so the way it works now is that you can set a repository private and it can be public. And the currently there's no sophisticated authentication scheme. There's a sort of prototype of it, which is basically based on cookies, like password, user password sort of thing. But I plan to have, you will be able to, through the interface, you will be able to issue tokens to specific ships maybe. And to specific ships if you are being contacted from another Urbit ship, but also like to the outside. Like you can, it's sort of what GitHub does. Like they have these tokens for the API, so it's gonna be the same thing.
Are those Git standards or?
No. So Git by itself, there's zero. Okay, so the networking in Git on Urbit, it works over HTTP. There's no, I mean, it's authentication over HTTP. It's not specific to anything the Git provides. Of course, normally when you work with GitHub, that SSH, right? So you have your keys in there. I'm not gonna implement SSH server just so that you can clone here. So we're just gonna stick with some tokens. Git can give you like a credential store. So I'm not sure how secure is it. I think there's some external tooling that you can use for that. Yeah. All right, so if no more questions, thank you very much for your attention. And Will, did it work? Okay.